Okay, so like I said, this is my favorite, one of my favorite authors. I would say definitely in my top 10, right behind Lori Wilde, Maisie Yates, and Linda Lyle Miller is always Carolyn Brown. Love Drunk Cowboy has got not only one but two stories in this wonderful book. I'm going to read the back cover to you, and I'm going to read you the paper clips in this first one, which is Love Drunk Cowboy. It's one of my favorites, and I think if you pick this book up, it'll be one of your favorites as well. As an intoxicating as love can be, after high school, Austin Lanier left the sleepy town of Terrell, Oklahoma as fast as her feet could carry her. When she learned she inherited her grandmother's watermelon farm, she just wants to sell the place, slip on her stilettos, and run back to corporate America until drop-dead sexy neighbor cowboy Rye O'Donnell shows up and tempts Austin to trade her heels for cowboy boots. Now, Rye O'Donnell had had his eye on Lanier Watermelon Farm forever, and when he finds out that Granny Lanier's city slicker granddaughter is the one selling, he thinks he's got it made. Rye is knocked sideways when he realizes that she is not only is Austin a savvy businesswoman, but she's sexy as HE double hockey sticks. And pretty soon Rye decides he doesn't want the farm unless he can have that fiery woman who owns it as part of the deal. And as I said, I absolutely fell in love with this entertaining, wonderful love story. If you read this story, I know you will love it too. I only picked out, I think this first one's got about 4 pages that I want to share with you. And the reason I picked this 4 pages is because it reminded me of Blake Shelton with that tattoo he has with the barbed wire. Listen to this. Okay. I gotta find which page I marked. I apologize. Okay, she's asking him, tell me how you came to live in Terrell anyway, she said. My mother's brother, Uncle Terrence, lived out in West Texas. He inherited a farm from one of the uncles back when he was about 20. Long story short, he was out there rounding up cattle one day, was coming down from a small rise when his horse tumbled, and his foot hung up in the saddle. He couldn't get out, and the horse rolled on him. A rib pierced his heart, and he died instantly. I'm so sorry. Were you close to him? I went there every summer. We stayed a couple weeks with him, and when I was a teenager, I worked summers for him. I was about 25 when he died, and he left everything he owned to me. I didn't want to live in West Texas, so I sold the ranch and used the money to buy this one. There was this old house sitting right here, but I tore it down, the same electric water lines that hook up to my trailer, and moved all his cattle up here. So you just raise Angus? Anything to keep her mind off that broad chest and that barbed wire tattoo on his arm. That's what I raise for beef cattle. I also ride bulls and keep rodeo stock, and in the summer I'm in Mesquite, Texas every weekend making a few dollars with them, he said. Did your Uncle Terrence do the rodeo stuff too? Keep him talking about cows and bulls. Surely that wouldn't conjure up visions of her cheek lying on that barbed wire tattoo. Rye nodded. Yes, he did. Only he was a bronc rider like Raylene, and I learned a lot to pick out good bulls for rodeo for him, and he taught me a lot too. How to make this bread, she smiled brightly. Rye's eyes twinkled. You are a sly one, but it won't work, Austin Lanier. Never underestimate me, Rye. I'm getting used to what I want, whether it's by hard work or by plain old good luck, she told him. And what do you want? The recipe for what you doze up as the butter for this bread. Good luck, you're going to need it. Fair enough. So you moved here 10 years ago. That was when you were 27. What did you do before that? Rode a few bulls, finished high school, went to college. What did you study? Agribusiness. Finished college, spent a year out of Uncle Terrence's place, and then I decided I didn't like it out there, so did a few rodeo rounds, But I'm not as good as Dewar or Ray Lynn, but made a few dollars, though. Worked in agribusiness center in Plano for a year, but hated the city and couldn't wait to come home every Friday night. Was saving to buy my own place, living cheap, driving an old truck. Then I had the good luck to have a quick buyer on the West Texas property, and I bought this place. Not much exciting, just plain old living. Now tell me about you. You already know about me. Granny kept you informed. You said so yourself. So why did you choose that barbed wire tattoo? It's a long story, old Gemma, and I know the real reason. She waited. Okay, my girlfriend dumped me. I was drunk, and I decided to get a tattoo to remind myself never to trust another woman. On my left arm, and that's where that vein runs from the finger to my heart, according to the old wives' tale about where we wear our wedding rings on our left hand. Why barbed wire? At that time, I decided to stretch barbed wire around the vein so that no woman would ever hurt me again. It was a symbol to never let anyone near my heart again. Have you? Not yet, he lied. How about your fellers? A few. Serious? A couple. Ever lived with one? She shook her head. Never got that serious. Why? Are they stupid? I tend to turn men off. He cocked his head to one side and stared at the beautiful woman sitting across the table from him, dark hair flowing like strands of silk to her shoulders, the eyes a blue summer sky were thick lashes, lips that begged to be tasted on an hourly basis. Were the men in Tulsa just brain dead? She took a deep breath and went on, hoping that she didn't get tangled up in her words. She couldn't remember the last time she'd gotten tipsy and wasn't sure what might happen. You think I was a blonde. You heard all those blonde jokes? Well, most men seem to expect that kind of mentality from me. Mindless stupidity. They want a robot that looks like a movie star, that performs in the kitchen like Rachel Ray and in the bedroom like a whorehouse madam. By the second date, they realize I'm none of the above, and they walk me to the door, give me a peck on the cheek, and I never hear from them again. Rye finished the last bite of his steak and asking, the two who did call back? One in college. We were in our rebellious years, and that was our connection. When I settled down to study for my master's, he went out to get his next rebellious girl. The other was a workaholic, just like me. We had everything in common on a business plane, but no actual vibe on a physical level. You make any woman a wonderful wife the way you cook. You think you ever find that woman that you ever think you'll find a woman that you can trust? Oh, I gotta blow my nose, sorry. Never know, I just might. I did once, but Granny was too old for me. She said so herself when I proposed. Rye reached across the top of the chair up beside the grill and touched a button on the top of the portable CD player. A country piano and a drum beat started. Then Hank Lachlan began to sing, Please Help Me, I'm Falling. Rye stood up and held out his hand. May I have this dance, please, ma'am? Dinner and dancing, too. This is a date, she said. Yes, it is. Did you have a doubt that it was? She shrugged and melted into his arms, her face onto his chest, where she could hear his heart doing double time. She started with one hand around his neck and the other in his hand before Hank finished the first song and George Jones began singing Walk Through This World With Me. She had both arms around his neck, and he hugged her up to him with his hands on the small of her back. The porch became a dance floor, and the deck became the best honky-tonk she ever set foot inside. Where did you find a CD like this? One of those things on TV, you know. Get this, and for only $19.99. But wait, there's more. Well, I ordered this box called Lifetime of Country Romance. It's all the oldies. To know if Austin and Rye got together, I ain't going to tell you, but I will tell you that Love Drunk Cowboy gets an outstanding rating of a 30. That's how good it is. Now we're going to move to other story here. Well, hold on a second. I guess we still have more here that I want to share with you. So, this is more of Love Drunk Cowboy. And this is why Donna needs a Benadryl. I think I'm allergic to peanut butter. Anyway, Rye's heart stopped. His breath caught in his chest. The world stopped turning. He stopped the brakes so hard that his truck slung gravel halfway to Galveston, and he only missed running a smack over Granny's old sofa, sitting out in the yard, by turning the steering wheel hard to the right. 1 minute he had been driving along, listening to Blake Shelton sing Delilah. The next he was out of the truck and stomping toward the porch. His boots were crunching the driveway gravel with each step. Austin stopped the tray of ice on the floor and ran to the door when she heard the commotion. It sounded as if there'd been a wreck right outside, right in her front yard. She met Rye blasting through the front door. "Want a sandwich?" she asked. "Hell no," he growled. "Well, good afternoon to you, too," she said curtly. "No hug, no kiss. What are you doing?" His voice was hoarse and cold. "I might ask you the same thing. Why were you trying to sling all my gravel into the river? What's got you in a twist?" "You, what did I do?" He pointed to the tattoo around his arm. "I should have listened to that barbed wire." She popped her hands on her hips. "Hunter, there ain't a piece of barbed wire mean enough in the world to keep me out of the pasture that I want to crawl into, and you best start explaining that comment. You were leaving The house is empty. You got crap for brains? I'm not going anywhere. I closed up my apartment in Tulsa a month early. That truck out there has my things in it, and I'm moving in here. Granny's stuff is all going up to that room at the back of the implement barn up by the garden. Someday I might go through it a box at a time, but right now I just don't have time. I've got to make wine and a wedding to plan if this hot-headed, sexy rancher from across the road ever gets off his lazy butt and asks me to marry him." She wore the cut-off overalls, a red tank top. Her hair was in a ponytail. Cowboy boots were worn at heels and scuffed at the toes, and her blue eyes danced and sweat trickled down her neck. She was just so dang beautiful that he couldn't believe what she'd just said. He shook his head, but the words didn't disappear. "Well, I'm talking about you, Rye O'Donnell." "My butt is not lazy." "Yes, it is, and honey, if I have to, I'll get the wire snips and take part of that damn barbed wire tattoo off your arm. I intend to get the other side of that and make a nice warm nest in your heart." Had someone told her 4 months before that she'd be standing in her grandmother's kitchen proposing to the man from across the street, she never would have believed them. But there she was, vulnerable as she waited on his response and hoping she didn't really have to get down on the wire snips and make him bleed, where she would remove a section of his barbed wire. Rye dropped down on one knee and took her hands in his. "Austin Lanier, will you marry me? Do you mean it, or are you just protecting your tattoo?" He pulled at her hand and she joined him on the floor. "I love you. I have since the first minute I laid eyes on you while you were taking care of Granny's ashes down at the river." "Aha, I knew my gut was not wrong." "What?" "I knew that you were back there. I could feel it in my gut. And this was supposed to be so romantic, so," he smiled, "I've got something planned far more romantic, but the truck out there scared the bejesus out of me. Yes, Rye, I'll marry you. I've loved you almost as long as you have me." He gathered her into his arms and kissed her long and hard and passionately. "When," he whispered. She snuggled into his chest a few more moments longer, then leaned back. "As soon as you buy me a wedding band. A big, wide, gold band. I don't have to take it off to squeeze watermelons for wine making. How soon can you do that?" "Tomorrow morning," he said. "Then tomorrow morning it is." She wrapped her arms around his neck and brought his lips down to hers. And to find out if her mama approved, if the wedding actually did take place, you have to read the book. That's right, but it gets that great rating. And I'm trying to see what the cats are doing because they're in here, and maybe I shouldn't have had them in here like this, but I thought, well, they'll be okay. But I'll have to see here in a minute what they're doing. I'm sure it's nothing too big. Summertime on the Ranch, a Spikes and Spurs novella. I loved this book, and this book, to me, it was great, outstanding. There's a section right here, right off the bat on the first page, where she's looking at the dog and judging the dog for the dog's looks. And the owner of the dog tells her exactly what he thinks of that. Becca scolded herself for leaving the door open. Now Dalton's pesky dog had snuck into the watermelon wine shed. If he scratched off a hair and landed in one of the containers of juice, she intended to strangle that shraggy critter and hang him out on the barbed wire fence to show all those ugly other mutts in southern Oklahoma what happens when a dog hair got into her wine. She crammed the air locked down on the bottle, wiped the outside, and hurried out to the door. "Get out of here," she yelled as she pointed outside. Austin had trusted her with the wine shed for a whole week, and she was not going to let her boss and the best friend down. Tough rolled over to his back and looked up at her with big brown eyes. I said go! She stomped her foot, but the dog just wagged his tail. Who named this raggedy mutt Tough anyway? She grabbed a broom, and his tail flipped back and forth like it was a blur. He ain't afraid of a broom. Dalton's deep Texas drawl startled her. I used that one just like that to scratch his tummy out in the barn, and if he's named after Tough Hedeman, who's a world champion professional bull rider. He gave a shrill whistle, and Tough jumped up from the floor and stood at attention. Come on, boy. We won't stay where we're not wanted. Shaggy from the old Scooby-Doo would fit him better, Becca said. Now you're just hurting that poor little fella's feelings, Dalton said. Don't pay no attention to what she says, Tough. She don't know jack squat about a good rodeo dog like you. Becca popped up, her hands on her hips. I've been to rodeos, and I grew up on a ranch. Don't tell me that I don't know nothing about cattle dogs. Dalton Wilson's confidence oozed out of him, but then... Hold that thought, folks. We'll come back to it in a minute. Mom's calling.